Welcome to the Sportsbook Review, NBA Playoff Preview Show. I'm Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com, along with Troy West of TroyWins.com. We are going to preview the Tuesday and Wednesday portfolio of the NBA playoffs, and we'll get to it in a moment. But before we do go on any further, I am sure 95% of you are already subscribed to Sportsbook Review's YouTube page. If you're not, do it right now. Click subscribe, and please feel free to comment any questions that you have. Put it in the comments section, and either Troy or I will get back to you. Well, Troy, it's been a great NBA playoff so far at OffshoreInsiders.com. I'm literally on one of the great runs of my life, 49-15 in basketball. That's college and pro combined. And I know that your clients have been quite happy as well. But let's start it out with the Tuesday card. We do have, as I look, I'm looking right now at the SBR odds live, Milwaukee and Boston. Boston is anywhere from a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite, though 4 is more common. Miami at Philadelphia, the 76ers try to end this series. They're laying 10 against Miami, and that's pretty much across the board at SBRodds.com. And then we got San Antonio at Golden State. Golden State also trying to advance to the second round tonight. They are laying anywhere from 11 to 11.5 points. What jumps out at you tonight, Troy?
Yeah, it's a really interesting card. I'm kind of surprised to see, the Philadelphia 76ers favored as much as they are favored by. I do think they definitely win tonight's game. But I'm going to start with that Boston-Milwaukee game. Originally, I was all over Boston in this series. They took the first 2 home games, and then I was all over Milwaukee the next 2 games, got burned on one of them. They blew a 16-point halftime lead, won by 2. I do like Milwaukee tonight. I think Milwaukee's got the momentum. I think they figured out kind of Boston offensively. Boston's really struggled to score against Milwaukee. I do think, it's going to be tough for them to go into Boston and get the win, but I think this team right now is playing much better basketball in this series. So I actually like Milwaukee as an underdog tonight. That Philadelphia-Miami game, Joe, I just think that's a pass. 10 points, a lot of points. Like I said, Philadelphia at home, they're without a doubt going to want to clinch that series and wrap that thing up. But will they do it by double digits? I think that's a tall order. I just don't know. Miami's been competitive off and on in this series. They did get the one game in Miami. But throughout the series, for the most part, other than sputtering for 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, Miami's been pretty competitive. And then I got to think the Spurs, they got their big win at home, but I think that was more of a letdown by Golden State than the Spurs actually coming out and playing phenomenal basketball. So again, I like Golden State, but do they win by 12 points or more? To me, it's kind of a pass. To me, it's a bit of a tricky card today. I do like Milwaukee, but the other two, laying double digits is just too many in my mind, Joe.
Yeah, there are some situations that I'm also looking at tonight. And Troy, I agree with a lot of what you said. Obviously, Milwaukee and Boston, you could not be more evenly matched in this series. Of course, it is tied at 2 apiece. The Celtics winning 1 game in overtime, and Milwaukee, of course, winning that last game with the baseline jumper at the buzzer. Boston's a minus 120 favorite to win the series, so clearly the odds makers think the series is evenly matched, and with Boston only being a 3.5 point home favorite. I do want to note the blind zigzag. It doesn't apply just in this series. It applies in every other series, but the blind zigzag, if some of you are saying, what the hell is the zigzag? It's an old theory to bet on the team that lost the previous game to cover the next game. The teams are going to bounce back. Well, it's down to 531 and 515 all time in the history of our database, mostly because the last 2 years it's been awful, 33 and 55 for 37.5%. But this series, as you said, Troy, if anything, maybe a slight advantage to Milwaukee because they have a little bit more depth because of the big injuries to Boston, and the series has been so closely contested. But, all in all, I'd still rather have 2 of my final 3 games at home. So if I were going to make a bet, probably would be Boston minus 120 to win this series. Obviously wouldn't be shocked if just the opposite happens for many of the reasons that you did state. And of course, I do have to say, and we'll talk about specifically why later on in this video, I'm not a big fan of doing the series or future bets for reasons that I will explain. Miami and Philadelphia, we talked about it before because the Sixers, their 2 best players, of course, are very young. They've got Ben Simmons, the redshirt rookie, so to speak, and then you have Joel Embiid, who is the redshirt second-year player. So there might be a little bit more sense of urgency by the Sixers than there would be most teams that are up 3-1 to win a series. Taking the team, though, a road team in a battle of two high-scoring teams, when the home team is fat and happy off of a win and the road team recently has been scoring well, is a good play for the road team. That's 290, 180, and 8. That applies during both the regular season and the postseason, but it does hold up in the playoffs. It is 8-4. That, of course, would benefit Miami. Also, going against teams that are streaking in the opposite direction. Clearly, the Sixers, they're the hottest team in the NBA going back to the regular season, but when you take a team that's on a straight-up losing streak against a team on a straight-up winning streak, and that's not necessarily, consecutive games, but just overall one team's very hot and the other team is cold. It does benefit the colder team, which would be Miami at a 5.02 and 381 rate, including 78 and 52 in the playoffs. But then again, conversely, and Troy, we've talked about this when we've done some of our football videos, the public loves to bet favorites. That's during the regular season. All of a sudden, in the postseason, they like to bet underdogs, and they even like to bet big underdogs. So, not shockingly, as a result, big favorites are a pretty good play in the postseason. 34 and 15, 99 and 64, including 34 and 15 when the team that we're betting on has at least 2 series wins. So that would seem to benefit Philly. But like I said, the postseason completely different than the regular season as far as public betting patterns. And hence, usually betting big underdogs, pretty good play, especially under specific circumstances during the regular season. Not necessarily the case during the postseason. San Antonio and Golden State, this is really a tough one because we talked about how, it's an uncomfortable thing to do to exploit the tragedy of San Antonio maybe rallying around the Popovich family. But, you'd be derelict if we just completely ignored it as a handicapper. But then again, how long does that last? Is it still going to be a rallying cry? No, maybe analogous to it where the New York Rangers a few years ago overcame a 3-1 deficit after Marty St. Louis. His mother died. So this might be another rallying cry for the Spurs, but still, Golden State for different reasons. I talked about the 76ers maybe having more of a sense of urgency than you would expect from a team that's up 3-1. Golden State, Steve Kerr was quoted as recently as today saying it's going to be a while before Steph Curry comes back. So they probably would not rush him back even if San Antonio wins tonight and maybe somehow forces a Game 7. So I do think there is a little bit of a sense of urgency for Golden State to put this game away. And as I said, big favorites are generally pretty good bets during the postseason. Wednesday, a full slate indeed, and I'll be looking at the live SBR odds as we speak. Indiana, Cleveland. Cleveland laying 6.5 in a series that's been, arguably the most interesting so far. Washington at Toronto. Toronto, a massive 7-point home favorite. Can they, and I'll talk about it, when we throw it back to me, I'll let you talk about the Wednesday card first. But yeah, Toronto's got that history of some postseason failures. So how will that factor in this series that's tied at 2-2? Minnesota and Houston, yeah, I thought Minnesota could make a run for it so far. They haven't done much of that. Houston, a prohibitive 12-point favorite, up 3-1. And, the two evenly matched teams, so it's not really a surprise that the lower-seeded team is ahead. Utah and Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City will be trying to stave off elimination. They'll be laying 3.5. So what do you like on the Wednesday portfolio?
Yeah, I do think Toronto's going to bounce back. Again, high line. Vegas really favoring these home favorites that are in critical, closeout situations. Or here in Toronto, it's kind of I don't want to call it do or die. If they lose this game, they could still win the series. But a big game for Toronto. They are the number 1 seed. They did lay 2 eggs on the road in Washington, but I do think Toronto's the better team in this series. 7, though, a lot of points. I would probably stay away from this. Washington's got a lot of momentum. They just won 2 in a row. Bradley Beal and John Wall look to kind of be back to their old selves. So for me, Joe, that's kind of a stay away game. The one game I do like is Cleveland. Cleveland, in Indiana was up 16 plus points in both of those games. One of them they did choke away. The other one, they were able to close the door before they choked away. They almost choked away that one as well. But I think LeBron James found something. I think his role players are starting to play a little bit better. Jordan Clarkson looked good. 6.5, I don't think it's enough points in that one. I would definitely lean Cleveland. And then finally, like you said, Minnesota, Houston, Minnesota looked good there in one game, and then they completely fell apart in game 4. So I think at this point, Minnesota knows this series is over. They're down 3-1, but 12 points is just too many, Joe. So for me, again, that's a stay away. These lines are just kind of absurd to me, to be honest with you. So I don't want to take the 12 points and be burned like they were burned last time, but at the same time, 12's too many to be rolling with Houston as well.
Yeah, from my standpoint, Cleveland and Indiana, it's pretty simple. I'm buying into the LeBron hype. This is the playoffs. LeBron James will them to victory. On paper, Indiana is a very good team, and on paper, yeah, this is probably the year that LeBron James is most vulnerable to not make it to the NBA Finals, even be upset in the first round. But still, with LeBron, I like them. I said at the beginning, I thought this would be an under series because no unit would improve more in the playoffs than Cleveland's defense. They were awful offensively during the regular season, but you knew they would turn it up a notch. And so far, that has been right. That has been an under series. Washington and Toronto, I basically have a system that compares the current line to the margin of the last game. And basically what it says is when a team is coming off a blowout loss, but still a big favorite, they've been a great play, 225 and 174, though in the name of accuracy, not so much the last 2 years, 17 and 25, but still that would benefit Toronto. Minnesota and Houston, as I said, I thought that Minnesota was my dark horse team for 2 reasons. Look, Derrick Rose, I thought maybe he could be that Jason Kidd type player, Jason Kidd with Dallas a couple years ago, where a veteran would play more minutes. He didn't have to ration himself, and that maybe Derrick Rose would take it to the next level in the playoffs. And maybe I'm still a little bit brainwashed by Andrew Wiggins, all the hype coming out of high school. I still think, he's the guy that I'm just waiting to break out and become a superstar. He's obviously a good player. He's not quite the superstar that was expected of him, but so far he has not really justified that hype. But I thought, between Rose and Wiggins, that maybe Minnesota could pull off the stunning upset. But I don't get blindly, I don't like to bet my series futures because, as I said, I want to make those series adjustments. Houston was part of my incredible run last night, so I went with Houston despite the fact I thought Minnesota would be a pretty good play. Utah and Oklahoma City, look, we talk about breakout players. We always look for either young guys, or I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for you, Troy, but I said I look for either young guys or maybe those aging veterans who can find the fountain of youth. But this kid, Engel for Utah, what a breakout series he's had. A 30-year-old guy, played in Europe, then came to the NBA and was clearly good enough to be in the NBA. Looked like though he would be a journeyman for maybe 5 or 6 years, but he is really, he's a better player this year, and now in the playoffs he's been tremendous. So I also think maybe this will be a seminal moment where it's well documented, where veteran players are key in the postseason. Even LeBron and Michael Jordan didn't lead their team to championships, so they were in the league for a couple years, but with the one and done, maybe this is the year that Philadelphia and Utah could be 2 teams led by young players. Donovan Mitchell's been tremendous for Utah. So between Mitchell and then, the breakout player so far being Engel, who knows? Maybe Utah could actually make a deep run in the playoffs. But this is another one that has to do with big favorites off a blowout loss would benefit Oklahoma City in this game for them to bounce back. But still, Utah is definitely a team to take a look at. Well, Troy and I will be back. We're adjusting our schedule because of the dynamics of the NBA playoffs. But Troy and I are going to be here throughout the NBA playoffs to give you great betting information. Before we go on any further, Troy, why don't you tell them what they can get at TroyWins.com?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Pretty excited right now. We hit our big NHL series bet with the Washington Capitals. They were down 2-0. A lot of people had a lot of doubt after being down and losing both home games, but we do lock that dead. Got another really strong NHL series bet coming up, so come take a look at TroyWins.com. Slipped up a couple games now in the NBA playoffs. The Milwaukee Bucks at home in Game 4 hurt us a little bit, and then in Game 4 Golden State hurt us. But, hey, we're still in the black in terms of the NBA playoffs. So come take a look. Happy to give you a free trial. It's TroyWins.com.
And I've been in this business approaching 30 years, 49 and 15 basketball run. It's one of my better runs ever. It's not atypical. I've had some great runs before, and certainly ones that lasted longer than this, but this is an all-time classic winning streak. You can't be on the outside looking in any longer. If you are, it is time to hop on the bandwagon at offshoreinsiders.com. And I've also had a very solid NHL playoffs. I'm only one game above 500, but it includes 210 and 150 winners, a couple other underdogs along the way. So we're up in the NBA playoffs, way up in the NBA playoffs, and a little bit up in the NHL playoffs. Offshoreinsiders.com. Make sure you continue to follow us at Sportsbook Review. Troy and I will be back to continue to preview the remainder of round 1 of the NBA playoffs, round 2, 3, and 4 at Sportsbook Review.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.